Hello everyone, it's your boy Snake back with another video. This time I want to do something a little different and put a new spin on a common topic of discussion. And that topic is, what are the best decks for new players getting into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh? There are plenty of videos by other YouTubers which go over decks which are budget, beginner friendly, and can also hold their own against the meta. I think this topic's been covered pretty extensively by others, so I want to talk about the flip side of it. And that is, what are the worst decks that beginners can choose? Keep in mind that these decks aren't simply the worst decks overall, in fact some of them are pretty strong, but rather ones that should be avoided by new players. It could be due to the high price tag, but also some other important factors to consider. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For only a little over a year, so it's still fresh in my mind what it's like to be a beginner. I've seen new players fall into a lot of traps of making poor investments, and have made some of these mistakes myself. This list will go over decks that are often recommended to beginners or which beginners are interested in playing that are bad choices. First, at number 5, we have Dark Magician. This deck is the definition of nostalgia bait and is ultimately just Dragoon Turbo at the end of the day. As a result, it's not very strong, and I wouldn't even consider it rogue tier personally. It's also extremely expensive, with many of the key cards being inaccessible even after they've been reprinted. For example, Magician's Souls, which is a mandatory 3 of in the deck, was reprinted in Brothers of Legend, but it was reprinted as a secret rare once again, and is still going for over $40 a copy. Soul Servant, another 3 of, is also going for over $40 a copy. The Dark Magician's fusion card is going at a whopping $90 a copy, and the boy himself, which the deck revolves around, Dragoon, is going over $100 a pop. But don't worry guys, Konami was nice and reprinted him as a Starlight Rare, which you can get for a measly $400 a pop. Needless to say, this deck isn't remotely worth the price tag, and new players should avoid it like the plague, even if you really liked Dark Magician in the anime. If you want to play Dragoon, there are many more competent decks, such as Drytron, which can actually do other stuff besides Turbo Out Dragoon, and can also compete with the meta, and are much cheaper. At 4 we have Floowandereeze Nuts. Although this deck is fairly strong, there are a couple of factors which make it a poor choice for beginners. First of all, the deck is fairly difficult to wrap your head around. I'm not saying it's some galaxy brain deck or anything, but you need to understand a lot of the mechanics of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game that other decks do not require. You have to understand pretty well not just how chains work, but how effects with multiple parts resolve, simultaneous effects, mandatory effects, and have to know specific rulings that just pertain to this deck. The deck is good for players with some experience and will only get stronger with upcoming support, but it is just a nightmare for new players to navigate. The price tag is also quite high with this one, which a lot of people don't really talk about. Pot of Prosperity is pretty much a mandatory 3 of in this deck. It is definitely a lot better than Pot of Extravagance, since you are always looking for one specific card to start your combos. And Pot of Prosperity has only been getting more and more expensive over time, since it only has the one printing in Blazing Vortex. It's now sitting at over $130 a pop. There's also Rise of the Mega Monarch, who is a mandatory 1 or 2 of, and has climbed to over $40, and I'd only expect this price to increase unless he gets reprinted soon. At number 3 we have Infernoble. This may be the most controversial pick on this list, but I really do not like it for beginners. Don't get me wrong, it is fairly budget and competitive, but let's be real. It's Halqifibrax Auroradon Turbo with extra steps. By this I mean you were just using Kriston Halqifibrax to go into synchro plays and end on Borreload Savage Dragon, Infernoble, Emperor Charles, and Herald of the Arclight, and other good synchros. The problem? The combo lines are incredibly complicated for no reason and take a very long time to accomplish what can be done much faster. You're going through a lot of different cards like Dracosac, Underworld Fighter, Balmog, and a bunch of other stuff, just to end on the same synchro board. Here I'll even show you how to get the exact same board with just one card, but much faster. Of course, I'm kind of oversimplifying here. The deck has many more options and a high skill ceiling, but the point still stands that it is definitely not for beginners. I hate to say it, but number 2 is Heroes. This archetype is one of my favorite in the game, and the deck I first wanted to build when I was getting into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! But I was talked out of it, thankfully. Out of all the decks on this list, Heroes is one of, if not the strongest, with the release of Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer allowing it to keep up with the meta decks. Unfortunately, the price tag on this deck is so absurd that I cannot justify recommending it to beginners. Similar to Dark Magician, Heroes have fallen victim to nostalgia bait. Looking at a typical deck list, you have the mandatory 3 of Ferris, who is currently going for nearly $60. Liquid Soldier may only be a 1 of, but he's going for over $60 as well. Increase, who is another key combo piece, is going at $20 each. And even though this deck has gotten new support with Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, he was printed as a secret rare, of course, and is going for over $100 a copy. This is not going to decrease anytime soon. And now you need to play 3 Fusion Destiny in the main deck, which continue to go up in price and are getting to at least $20 a copy. To make matters worse, the playstyle of this deck requires you to be able to break your opponent's boards and take them out as fast as possible, since heroes do not put up any negates and are not really good in the grind game. This means that Forbidden Droplet is pretty much mandatory in the deck. You thought the Brothers of Legend reprints would make this card more affordable? Well, hold on to your hats, because it's still going for over $90. As if to spit in our faces, Konami quote-unquote reprinted Forbidden Droplet and Ultimate Rare and Secret Rare again, causing one of the best staples in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! To be completely inaccessible to budget players. So despite me loving Heroes as a deck, they are a terrible investment for new players. Hopefully they will get reprints in the future to make it much more affordable, and this could definitely change. And at number 1, we have my favorite deck in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not Mystic Mine Burn. My reasons for not recommending this deck for new players, aside from the fact that it's clearly immoral to play, are quite different from the other ones. The deck can be played on a budget, so that's not really an issue. It's also not that the deck is too hard. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The deck is far too easy to play. It requires absolutely zero brain cells and is the most degenerate strategy in existence. You are literally trying to win by not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! If you want to learn and improve at the game, this is simply the worst way to do it. You don't have to learn different combo lines or learn how to disrupt other decks, you just sit on a singular field spell and pray that your opponent can't out it. Furthermore, I do think Mystic Mine will be banned sometime soon. Konami generally doesn't like to keep uninteractive cards in the game, which is why they banned True King of All Calamities and Utopic Zexal. They also did recently ban Mystic Mine in the OCG, so at least it's on their radar. While they may not ban it on the upcoming Forbidden and Limited list, it's bound to happen eventually. And what happens if you picked Mystic Mine as your first deck and Konami bans the card? You still won't know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, so you're basically starting from scratch. I physically cringe every time I see someone recommending this deck to beginners, so please don't play Mystic Mine. And that's the list. Hopefully this gave new players some guidance on what mistakes to avoid when getting into competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I said before, there are many great decks for new players which are featured by other YouTubers, so there are a lot of resources to find what deck you want to play as a beginner. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace!